Nobody ever thinks that a small disagreement is going to turn deadly. I mean, we have small disagreements almost every day, or at least every week in our lives. And over the years, we've come to find that most of the time, small disagreements pan themselves out. Even big disagreements. Generally, these small disagreements do not become deadly, and we don't die from them. But in today's case, sometimes disputes can get completely blown out of proportion and escalated in a matter of seconds. I got a different type of case for y'all today. I do. Look, today, I'm just gonna lay out what happened that night, what happened afterwards, what everybody said, and what we went to trial for. And then you tell me what you think of the court's decision. And look, we're not being armchair detectives here. That's the court decision, and we're citizens, okay? Like, this isn't Facebook. Nobody's asking you guys to go out and find who did it or whatever. We know who did it. They went to court. I just want to know, what do you think of the sentencing? This is a pretty interesting one. Bryanna Barozzini was from Westerville, Ohio. It's like a suburb in Columbus. There's a lot of mixed income all over the area. It's not really clear whether she was in one of the big houses or she was kind of in one of the smaller areas of Westerville around Columbus. She was a pretty normal girl, okay? She grew up in a house with her mom and a stepdad. She went to high school. She graduated high school. As soon as she finished high school at 18, she enrolled in college. Just typical girl, So it's around the time that she enrolls into Columbus State that all of this happens, and it takes her life for such a drastic turn. I mean, when I was looking through this, I could tell Bryanna, she liked to party a little bit. She might be smoking, drinking, whatever. She's like one of those girls. I mean, if you look at her, even in the court footage, you feel like you've been in a classroom with her before, but she wasn't causing any problems. She just went to school, graduated, and went to college. So sometime before she graduated high school, she met a girl named Halia Culbertson, and they were super close. Some reports say that they were best friends, but I'm going to be honest. I do a lot of true crime cases, and I can't tell you how many times I go through a case where it's like, they were friends. They were best friends. And sometimes they're not. I think the media will do that to make it a little more salacious. Bryanna and Halia were friends. They were close friends, but they were not in diapers together growing up. They were not hanging out at each other's house every single day. They were good friends, but they ended up just having a falling out after knowing each other for a few years. So Halia also kind of had same vibes as Bryanna, okay? They'll chill, they might party, they might smoke, they might do something like that. Halia had 4 siblings. She was on the cross country team in middle school. She had a pretty close friend group. When I was going through this, it seems like a lot of people made statements about her. They missed her, they thought about her, they cared about her. She definitely had quite a bit of a circle. There was somebody that was reminiscing on how when she would take the bus with her friends, they would do singing competitions on the buses with their other friends, which I just think it's the cutest thing ever. And so many of us did that in middle school. She was pretty normal, okay? And I really want to drive that home because Bryanna and Halia were pretty normal. I feel like we've all met these types of girls in high school. So it's how did we get to this point? But first, a sponsor. Today, one of our sponsors is Athena Club, and I like this because I literally just used mine, okay? I had to hit the pits before we started filming the video because otherwise I'm gonna lift my arm up, I'm gonna have whole patch hair, which there's nothing wrong with it, but for me personally, I wanna get rid of that. And if you wanna get rid of yours, you can too with Athena Club. And it's not just about getting rid of the hair. It's about doing it right, okay? My skin is super, super sensitive. I've always been very prone to razor burn if I use the wrong razors. And look, sometimes you can't be getting that $15 razor up there every other week, right? With Athena Club, these last for such a long time. Because look, the razor kit is only $10. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how. It also comes with an additional head in there. Yes, Lord, I am not kidding. So look, you can treat your skin right, get rid of hair that you don't want, and take care of sensitive skin with Athena Club. Just go to athenaclub.com. That's ATHENACLUB. SINISTER.com, load up your cart, whether it's the razor kit or some of their other essentials, and then use my code SINISTER for 30% off. Look, y'all can't deny 30%. That's a good deal. That's a good one. We done did you right. Now, on kind of the dark side, Halia was also extremely protective of her friends. Like, if anybody crossed one of her friends, she would be the first person to, like, defend them and, like, really get up in somebody's face. Now, on one hand, this could cause issues. It could seem like she was kind of like an instigator or an aggressor. But on the other hand, it comes from a deeply loving place of like, you're not going to disrespect people I like. I'm going to defend the people that I love. Like, sure, it could have put some people in some awkward, escalated situations, but like, it comes from a good place. It comes from a place of caring about the people in your circle and wanting to let them know that you'll show up for them. So that's how she was. She was very, very protective. One of her friends said in an exact quote, "She was feisty, so no matter what, she loved you with all of her heart. But if you hurt her loved ones, she made it known that she was going to wreck your world." So at some point, Bryanna and Halia get into some kind of feud that goes on for a couple of weeks. It was just kind of building. Maybe they didn't like each other. Maybe it was a situation where Bryanna had said something about one of Halia's friends and she, was very protective. Maybe it was something that they had going on, but here's what's crazy. The motive, the dispute, nobody talks about it. It was such a short-term feud. Like, in the moment, I think it probably meant quite a bit to the girls, but it was just such a non-issue that, like, nobody brings it up. Nobody talks about what they were even fighting about. It almost seems like they even got to a point where they weren't really fighting anymore, but Bryanna had completely disconnected from Halia, and Halia wasn't having it. It wasn't a constant squabble because they weren't always around each other. Like, Bryanna was already out of school. She had graduated. I think there was like a couple texts here and there that were exchanged. The most incriminating ones were actually Bryanna sending texts to somebody else saying that if Halia didn't leave her alone, she was going to, quote, stab that bitch. So on one hand, it seems like Halia is pressing this issue and Bryanna is saying, I don't want to be involved in this. I don't want anything to do with you. However, I will escalate to violence if you don't stop talking to me, which I think is quite a jump, but she had been talking about this for quite a while. I mean, she knew that she felt violently towards her, right? But like I said, girls, oh my God, girls have fights all the time. People fight in high school. People fight physically. They duke it out. Like, it happens. We see people talking about it all the time. But I just want to make it very clear that Bryanna said in 2 different text messages that if Halia didn't leave her alone, that she was going to stab her. So it was already on her mind. So on March 26th, 2023, yes, this is that recent. It's crazy to me. Bryanna went with one of her friends. It was this guy to go to some smoke shop. Like I said, we're around Columbus, Ohio. So for those of you that want to know, this is in Emporium Square at the 161 Carryout Smoke Shop. And little did Bryanna know that Halia was already there. She was already at the smoke shop. She was there with somebody else buying something, and she had been kind of hanging around for a little bit, but she did not expect to see Bryanna, and Bryanna did not expect to see her either. So when she enters the smoke shop, immediately Halia starts talking mad shit. I mean, it is what it is. Like, she sees her and she gets riled up and starts, coming at her pretty aggressively. The store clerk did not want to deal with this, and so he actually kicked out Halia from the store and asked her to go stand outside. He said, I have a headache. I don't want to deal with all this. Which, on one hand, that kind of lends credence to, well, then she must have been the aggressor because she was kicked out of the store and asked to stay outside while Bryanna was allowed to stay inside and complete her purchase. Halia is outside, and the person she's with is actually recording a video of this. Now, important to know, the person in the video, this is Halia's brother. A lot of commenters on TikTok and on YouTube had a lot to say about him, but we'll come back to that. So in the video, you can very clearly see that they have been banished to the outside and they are waiting for Bryanna to come outside. They're talking about beating her up. They're excited about it. Her brother's ready to film it. I mean, Halia is unexpectedly seeing her. And then also she's probably frustrated that she got kicked out of the store. And so finally, Bryanna and her friend, they come out. Immediately, Halia just charges into Bryanna. And it's interesting because Brianna's demeanor is almost kind of like frozen, kind of like locked up. Like she doesn't seem scared per se, but she does seem like she wants her to back away from her. In the video, you can see Halia just really coming after Bryanna while Brianna's kind of trying to get away from her. Halia's wearing this orange t-shirt and she's coming after her and she's saying, "Who's obsessed? Who's obsessed with who?" Like you can hear her saying that, which might lend credence to maybe Bryanna was saying, "Oh, she's just obsessed with me. She won't leave me alone." And then also you can hear Halia say, "Who are you calling a cokehead?"
Hold up, sex! Hold up, sex!
Hey, get off my sister, bro. Get off my sister. Hey, if you touch my sister, girl, I'm gonna have to put my phone down, bro.
So after Halia gets upset with her for calling her a cokehead, supposedly, you can even see her get into this stance where she draws her fists back like she's ready to fight her. And Bryanna is backing away, backing away. Not only that, Halia's brother is sitting here behind the phone and he's saying, "Don't touch my sister, otherwise I'm gonna have to put this phone down." Which, like, honestly, he's just being really annoying. This is the guy that says, "Let them fight, let them fight." And in fact, I think that actually happened in this case, but that's exactly who he is. Then in the video, you can see Halia to continue to approach her.
Halia, crunch her to get it over with, bro. Crunch her, get it over with, Halia.
So you can see Halia just pushing into her while Bryanna is for sure trying to get away. She's stepping back. She's just very quiet and maneuvering away. This part is interesting because the attorneys both took this two completely different ways. In the video, you can very clearly see Bryanna reaching into her pocket to grab something. We can't see exactly what it is, but it's presumed that in this moment it was the knife. Now, the defense attorney for Bryanna, he claims that it was very, very obvious that this was the point where Bryanna pulled out the knife, brandished it, and waved it in her face as to let her know, "I have a knife. This is a warning." Now, that's what Brianna's defense attorney said. Now, the other side that is basically arguing for Halia is like, she did not warn her with the knife. She did not brandish it. She did not like really put it in her face. She had it by the side the entire time. That is how the two different attorneys interpreted this moment. Did Bryanna warn her with the knife, or was she preparing the knife down below by her side? Well, the video cuts off at the moment that this all happened, because right after this, Halia would go on to push Bryanna and then slap her across the face. And with the quickest motion, Bryanna, who already had the knife out, stabbed her in the neck. One stab, one motion, no other attack, one stab, but straight to the neck. This is another moment that both of the attorneys describe completely differently, even though it is all on video. Brianna's defense attorney said that at this point, Halia had been mortally wounded. She'd been stabbed in the neck, but he claims that she continued to attack Bryanna despite being stabbed in the neck, as a way to say she was so aggressive that even when mortally wounded, she still attacked my client. So that's what Brianna's defense attorney said. Now, the other side, they said that the moment that she was stabbed, everything de-escalated. So it's so interesting to me that there's actual video evidence of it. And now we can't see all of the video evidence because we're on YouTube right now, but in court, they saw all of this. There was CCTV footage and a cell phone recording of all of this, but still, both of the attorneys framed it a little bit differently. Regardless of how long everything went on afterwards, once she had been stabbed, they called the police and they arrived on the scene at 11:48 p.m. She was immediately taken by paramedics. I mean, the girl was stabbed in the neck. This is serious. Like, there is not much time. The goal is right now to save this 17-year-old girl's life. So she is rushed off to the hospital. And while all this is happening, Bryanna, she was back at home. They left and went back. The police knew that Bryanna was the one that had done this. Halia's brother was at the scene and knew exactly who she was. So within minutes, Halia is being sent off to the hospital and they're showing up at Bryanna's door to ask her some questions. But then also at 12:24 a.m., 40 minutes after she got to the hospital, they tried to save her life and unfortunately they couldn't, and she was pronounced dead at the hospital. While the hospital is working to inform the family, on the other side, Bryanna is still being asked questions by the officers, and at one point they asked her, "Did you have a knife?" She said yes. They said, "Did you brandish the knife?" She said yes. And they asked her, "Did she use the knife?" And she said yes. So that morning, it was March 27th, she was taken to Franklin County Jail and officially charged. This episode is also sponsored by IQ Bar. Guys, I love IQ Bar. I have a little bucket where I have all of the electrolyte like mixers that I put in. Those are my personal favorite. They've got like everything. They've got coffee, instant coffee. They've got protein bars. They have so many products. I think they actually have a sampler pack too, but that is one of the reasons why I like IQ Bar. It's not just one specialized item. It's a one-stop shop for several items that they're really, really good at. In the box, you get 7 bars and 8 sticks. 4 of the sticks are the electrolyte packets, which I really like. I like the raspberry lemonade one. And then 4 of them are coffee packs. They're like instant coffees that don't give you any jitters, and it's 200 milligrams of caffeine. So if you don't need 200, don't drink the whole thing, girl, because it works, but it's jitter-free. IQ Bar makes the #1 brain and body nutrition bar on the market right now. They have over 10,000 reviews, 10,000 5-star reviews and counting. I love seeing a whole bunch of reviews. It means like, okay, this is good. This is good. People are using it. So if you want to use it and get 20% off, they made it really easy. All you have to do is text the number 64,000 on your phone and just write the word SINISTER, and then they'll send you a link to get everything that you need. That's 20% off of all IQ Bar products, including the starter pack, and free shipping. Just text SINISTER to 64,000. She was brought up on charges for 2 counts of murder and then 1 count of voluntary manslaughter. The first count of murder was accusing Bryanna of purposefully killing Halia, and then the second count accused her of killing Halia while committing felonious assault. Now the last one, it was 1 count of voluntary manslaughter, which accused her of killing Halia while, quote, under the influence of sudden passion or a sudden fit of rage. With all of these charges, if Bryanna was convicted because she's 18 years old, she would serve life in prison without the possibility of parole for 15 years. You remember earlier, as we went through the video, I was telling you how the prosecution presented things and then how the defense for Bryanna presented things. We're going to rapid fire through a couple of those because I think it's just really interesting in this case. First of all, Bryanna's bail was set at $750,000, $750,000, $750,085 to be exact. This money was paid the very next day. It's unclear whether Bryanna came from one of those nicer homes in Westerville and they just had the money on hand, or if they had like set something up, but the bond was pretty relaxed. Like she was able to run around, but you know, there's a couple caveats like no flying. I think the judge in this trial was actually pretty strict on that. There's actually a clip of him. We can play it. The prosecution didn't want her to be out, so they tried to say she could be a flight risk, and the judge was like, I'm gonna let her chill. However, if you fly somewhere, we'll find you.
You need to show up. You've pled guilty. Make sure you're here. You don't show up, they will catch you. It always happens, and you'll get the max from me.
Now, for this week's episode, you guys will have to excuse me a little bit because normally it's all social dynamics, storytelling, past history, all of that stuff. And I basically learned these cases through and through, and I tell you guys everything from my noggin. But today I have a couple of notes because this is so court heavy and I want to make sure I get it right, but it'll still be the same vibe you're used to, okay? We're just getting every nitty gritty little detail. So the trial gets started and the prosecution starts to mount their case against Bryanna. And you guys know, these are brutal. I mean, the way that they cut your character down and try to spin every single little thing you did. I mean, that's the point of the courts, right? But the prosecution, and I want to remind you guys, a lot of you know this, but for those that don't, which is totally okay, the prosecution is for the state. They are defending the person that died, in this case, Halia, right? And then the defense, that is Bryanna's team that is trying to go against the state and say she's innocent, okay? So remember, defense team is Bryanna's team, the accused murderer, and then the prosecution is for the state defending the victim. So the prosecution for the state, they said that it was reasonable for Bryanna to be upset over Halia's aggression. They felt like, yes, Halia was the aggressor in the video, but Halia's actions did not justify using a knife on her. They said verbatim, none of these actions that Halia took justify Bryanna taking a knife and plunging it into Halia's clavicle. Rather, that is an act of unjustifiable rage. Now, sit on that for a minute. How do you feel about that? I mean, a lot of people online, they seem to have watched the video and they said like, oh, Halia was the aggressor, da-da-da-da. But, you know, taking the prosecution statements into mine, how do you feel about it? Was it unjustifiable rage? Here's a little test. What is the defense going to say to that? You guessed it. Her attorneys are going to say self-defense. Here's a quote from Robert Krapnick, who was Bryanna's attorney. So once again, the defense. Halia, quote, aggressively approached my client, who continued to back up saying, I don't want to fight you. You're not worth it. That's what Bryanna said. She said in the video, you're not worth it. But Halia would not stop. At one point, my client produced a knife and displayed it so the assailant would see the knife. That didn't stop her. Culbertson kept coming. She then struck my client in the face, and my client realized that she was not going to stop, so my client swung the knife. So now, you guys know how the courts work. Imagine we're in opening statements. You see what their arguments are about to be. On one hand, the prosecution is going to say this is unjustifiable rage. And then, on the other hand, the defense is going to say, this is self-defense, and it's on video. But those text messages I told you about earlier, they resurfaced during the trial, and the exact messages were revealed. Just a week before the stabbing, Bryanna sent a message to a friend and said, I'd sooner slice her throat if she comes near me again. She also said, I will cut that bitch on my whole family if she tries showing up at my family's home again. So then it begs the question, like, was it premeditated? Like, what dispute could have possibly been going on that led to this violence? But then something happens. Bryanna gets offered a plea deal on Monday, June 10th, 2024. So recent. But this was just a year after everything happened. They offered her a plea deal to drop the first two charges that I told you about and basically reduce everything down to manslaughter. With the other counts, she could have served life in prison without the possibility of parole for up to 15 years. But now she's looking at 3 years. 3 years. And that could be probation or it could be jail time. Obviously, the prosecution is going to push for jail if she decides to take this plea deal, but that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And then also it was like a fine of $10,000. So she can take this plea deal in which she would have to plead guilty, or she can try to fight it and go to court, not plead guilty, but then her attorney would have to prove without a shadow of a doubt that this was self-defense. Now, the other charges had been dropped, so if they do decide to go to trial over this, it would just be for the involuntary manslaughter. But if she were to get convicted, she could serve the maximum, which is up to 11 years. So now they have a choice to make, right? Do we take the plea deal and do the 3 years? Or do we try to fight this and get a non-guilty plea? Well, look, it's on camera. You ain't gonna gaslight me and tell me she didn't do it, you know? Or I guess obviously they're arguing for manslaughter. I was gonna say what my opinion is, but I don't know. What are your thoughts? Would you want to go to trial to this fully and prove that it was self-defense, or take the plea deal? Of course, they took the plea deal. So if you don't know, a plea deal is basically when prosecutors work with defendants to try to figure out an easier solution. which is them admitting guilt and getting some type of reduced sentence. And historically, plea bargains can be negotiated and abused. Now, the really unfortunate part of this is that Halia's family felt robbed of this sentencing. Her mother was quoted saying, "It feels like a betrayal of my daughter's memory and the justice she was promised. She wished my daughter to hell. She was clearly mad, swore on her whole family, her intent. So how does she end up at the same place at the same time?" So her mom is saying, did she know that my daughter was at the smoke shop and come after her? Halia's grandma said she was only 17. She hadn't even begun to understand what this world had to offer. Her family didn't even get a chance to see where her talents and love would take her. During the witness statements, Halia's mom also said, "The pain of losing a child is indescribable. It's a constant ache in my heart, a knot in the stomach that never loosens. But I had to be strong for the rest of my family. Planning a funeral for our daughter felt so surreal. What will she wear? What casket, flowers, music, headstone, obituary, transportation, accommodations? I'm sure I left a million things out. Trapped in a nightmare. I couldn't wake up, can't wake up, no way to escape, yet I had to stay strong." Her saying, what casket, what song, what headstone will I pick for my 17-year-old daughter is so depressing to me, man. Like, you know, when you're raising kids, you think once you get to like 16, 17, 18, oh, okay, we made it out of the woods. Like, we made it. There, I raised it. I raised the child. I did it. And so just her words around how young her daughter was and how they didn't get to see what's next, it's really painful. So on July 11th, 2024, Bryanna, who's 20 years old now, she officially accepted the plea deal and was sentenced to 3 years in prison with an involuntary manslaughter charge. So far, her behavior in jail has been good, and she has the possibility of an early release. Now, Bryanna, in court, after everything happened, said, "Not a day goes by that this incident hasn't been on my mind. I understand and feel for the victim's family as I know the pain I have caused. I also feel for my own family as this situation has caused them a lot of pain. I can understand and appreciate the pain that I have caused now. I will be living with this guilt for the rest of my life. I took a life, and I understand the victim's family will suffer for the rest of their lives, as well as my family for what I've put them through." Now, around town, it seems like there's a question that's always popping up about, was the fight deliberate? Even though Bryanna seemed to back away, did she know that she was actually at the smoke shop the whole time? Or was this just all a fateful meeting and it really was self-defense? I think one thing I really want to point out in this story is that everybody, I mean, even the prosecution defending Halia, they said that in the video, it's pretty obvious that she is advancing Bryanna and she is the aggressor. Now, I'm curious what you guys think of this case and the sentencing. I do want to be mindful, though, that after looking at some of the comments on TikTok about what people thought about this case, one thing that really bummed me out was just how many people were saying like, oh, this is Halia's fault. She was the aggressor. Like, oh, you talk shit, da 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 da. I mean, look, a lot of us have been in or seen these types of fights before. You ever heard of somebody from your school dying because they were stabbed in the neck? No, this is not as simple as talk shit, get hit. This is extreme. And then also, do I think that Bryanna should spend life in prison? No parole? No. But I don't think it's appropriate for people online to be saying things that we would say in a normal fight. Somebody was stabbed in the neck and killed. I also think it's really important how many of Halia's family members have shown up to, you know, speak up and support her and her memory. They actually made a GoFundMe page and it didn't even hit the goal. They've been probably dealing with a lot of people talking shit to Halia's brother, talking shit to their family, all of that, all because of this case. And in the very end, they lost their daughter. One corner of the internet thinks that they're bad people. And then Bryanna is going to get out in 3 years and probably be right back in their hometown. Now, my opinion about this case, sometimes online, we don't need to point fingers at and blame people that we don't particularly like. Sometimes things are really, truly, truly, genuinely a massive life-changing tragedy. And that's what they are.